Hey gang, Stephen Marshall, KYLandlordlaw.com. Back from vacation, rested, recharged, and ready to roll. So, most parts of the state, the courts are accepting eviction filings. So I want to give an update on what I'm seeing and hearing out there. Some counties, Clark, Madison, Mercer, they are interpreting the Kentucky Supreme Court's order allowing evictions to proceed as requiring all landlords to give a 30-day notice prior to filing an eviction. Now, I think that's the wrong interpretation of the order. The 30-day language in the order is only mentioned in connection with the CARES Act. And what's more, if every property was required to give a 30-day notice, then there'd be no reason to also have to fill out the verification of compliance form that you're not covered by the CARES Act. So, that being said, counties are going to do what counties are going to do. And so you probably need to check with your local court clerk to see how they're interpreting that order. I will grant the order is a bit confusing, it's a bit poorly worded, but it makes no sense, even under the poorly worded language of the order, to give or to require everyone to give a 30-day notice when you're basing it on the CARES Act, which does not apply to everyone. So that's one issue to pay attention to if you're looking to file an eviction these days. Second, the lawsuit between the Northern Kentucky Apartment Association and the governor has not been resolved yet. And so that creates this conflict, this situation where law enforcement officers are still directed by the governor not to enforce eviction judgments, and they are executive branch officials. The good news in Central Kentucky is that most constables and sheriffs have decided they're going to enforce eviction orders and perform set-outs as long as the judge signs off on them. So that is very good news, but you still probably want to check with your local constable or sheriff to find out their position on the issue if you're outside of Central Kentucky. Third, lots of people have been talking about the president's recent executive order, part of which addressed evictions and housing. And as I read the order, it really has very little legal effect. It doesn't seem to do much more than set policy. What it does is it directs the various heads of federal agencies and departments to look for ways to minimize evictions and to look for money for rental assistance for both landlords and tenants. So, there may be more to come from the president. There probably will be more to come from Congress. But as of now, the president's actions haven't changed anything. Evictions are still going to go forward. Now, what is interesting is that the Kentucky Supreme Court has issued a new order creating an eviction diversion project in Jefferson County, only in Jefferson County for now. And here's how it's going to work. There seems like 5 parts of the process. So step 1 is the landlord files an eviction notice form with the court, which will then schedule an initial hearing. Okay, that's pretty par for the course, what we always do. That notice is then served on the tenant by local law enforcement, either constable or sheriff, along with a summons for the tenant to appear at the initial hearing. And here's where it changes, but it's also going to give the tenant written information about rental assistance available to tenants through local funding agencies. Okay, that's going to be served on the tenant up front. Then both sides come to the initial hearing. Both the landlord and the tenant will be advised verbally, presumably by the judge, that local funding agencies may be able to provide rental assistance to cover the unpaid rent. Okay? Now, the next step is critical. Unless the tenant fails to appear or unless the landlord dismisses the case at the initial hearing, the matter is then postponed for another 7 days, and it is rescheduled at the court's next hearing date after 7 days. Okay, so the matter gets postponed, it gets delayed. It will presumably be heard and judgment be considered at the second hearing, unless a jury trial is requested by the tenant in the meantime. Now, this wasn't listed in the order, but it was listed in the press release for the project, which is that the metro government in Jefferson County and legal aid of the Bluegrass would have a representative present for each hearing. Okay, so this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Time will tell how effective it's going to be, but it's certainly going to delay a process that's already been delayed for going on 5 months at this point. If it's successful, or if they feel like it's successful and funding can be found to support it, this project could be expanded to other areas. My assumption is that Lexington would be the next place that they try it, but a couple of variables: it's going to have to be effective at reducing eviction judgments, and they're going to have to find funding for it. So if those two variables are met, it could be expanded. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that is working. And then the last thing, as we're filing evictions these days, I cannot emphasize enough to do your research to verify whether your property is covered by the CARES Act. You're going to have to prove to the greatest extent possible that you did your due diligence and that the records show that your property is not covered. And so unless you check these loan databases, there's really no way for you to know whether your loan has been conveyed or assigned to the federal government. Even if you did a loan at a private bank, that loan could have been assigned to a federal government program. And so unless you check the databases, you simply won't know that, and you may end up being in trouble when you get to court. So let me emphasize again, check the databases as you're filing these evictions. So I think that's it for today. We are back and rolling here at Sherrill, Marshall, and Schrader. We'd be glad to help you if you need help with these or other issues relating to your landlord and tenant relations. I'll update you as things develop. I'm looking for a hearing in the Northern Kentucky case somewhere towards the end of the month. But whenever that happens, I will certainly update you and let you know. And that's it for today. You guys have a great rest of your week and weekend. We'll talk soon.